when we chose the lake house. It was because it felt unfinished rather than abandoned. The previous owners had left furniture behind, not enough to suggest loss, but enough to suggest they left quickly. A dining table with one chair missing, a bookshelf half full, a calendar still hanging in the kitchen, turned to a month that had already passed. The realtor said the owners relocated for work and never looked back, and I remember thinking that sounded healthy. The lake sat directly behind the house, close enough that its edge crept into the yard when it rained. From the upstairs bedroom, the water looked calm in a way that felt rehearsed, like it knew how to behave when watched. My husband was drawn to the view immediately. He said it made the mornings quieter in his head. The kids loved the dock, even though it dipped slightly on one side. Our dog, Iris, refused to step onto it at all, and instead sat at the edge of the grass, watching the water as if she was waiting for something to surface. The first week passed without incident, but not without pattern. Every morning, the lake looked exactly the same, not similar, not calm again, but identical. The light hit it at the same angle regardless of weather, and the ripples near the shore never crossed into deeper water. The reflection of the house stayed slightly distorted, as if the lake had memorized an older version of it. One morning, my son asked why our reflection never showed the porch light, even when it was on. I told him reflections were imperfect, and I did not test that explanation. The house itself was quiet, but not in the way empty houses usually are. Sounds did not echo properly. Voices carried too clearly between rooms, even with doors closed. At night, when someone shifted in bed, the sound traveled downward instead of outward, as if the house preferred keeping things close. I started noticing changes only after we left the house. A window unlocked that I was sure I had latched. Shoes turned inward instead of outward near the door. The dog's water bowl filled closer to the brim than I ever left it. Once I found damp footprints leading from the back door into the hallway. They stopped just before the stairs. They were not shaped like shoes. I told myself the kids had tracked water in, wiped the floor, and did not mention it to anyone. That same morning, my son asked me why his backpack was wet. At first, I thought he meant spilled juice or something forgotten from the move, but when I picked it up, the fabric was cold and damp in a way that felt unmistakable. Not sticky, not stained, just wet, as if it had been submerged and then carefully dried enough not to drip. I asked him where he had left it the night before, and he told me it had been in his room, resting on the chair near his desk. His room faced the lake. When I checked the backpack more closely, I noticed grains of sand caught in the seams near the zipper. It was not the kind you track in on shoes, but the finer kind that settles where water meets soil. I had not taken the kids near the lake yet. I had been too focused on unpacking, on routines, on pretending everything was normal. When I asked my husband about it, he suggested maybe the movers had set it down outside by mistake. His answer came too quickly, like he needed it to be enough. That afternoon, I walked down to the water alone. The shoreline dipped gently, the mud dark and smooth, where the lake had receded slightly overnight. I noticed footprints near the edge, bare feet, adult-sized. They did not come from the house. They led toward it. The prints stopped a few feet from the water, and then began again, farther up the bank, closer to the tree line, as if whoever made them had stepped out of the lake and paused before continuing. I stood there longer than I meant to, listening to the water lap softly against the shore. The lake reflected the sky again, calm and indifferent, as though it had not been disturbed at all. That night, I checked the children before bed and found my son's backpack back on his chair. It was dry, clean, and empty. There was no sand, no smell, and no explanation. I did not tell anyone what I had seen by the lake. I did not tell them that something had carried my child's belongings into the water and brought them back without leaving a mark. I washed my hands for a long time afterward, even though I had not touched the lake. That was the night I started keeping the windows facing the water locked, even during the day. The lake became part of our routine in quieter ways after that. The kids threw stones and counted ripples, sometimes complaining that the water swallowed the sound instead of echoing it. My husband liked sitting on the dock at dusk, staring at nothing with his phone in his hand. When I asked what he was thinking about, he said the lake felt like it remembered him. I laughed because that sounded harmless when spoken out loud. That night, I dreamed I was standing at the edge of the water while someone stood behind me, close enough that I could feel their breath. I knew turning around would break something important, so I stayed still and waited to wake up. When I did, the back door was open, not wide, just enough to let the lake air in. The children began talking about a woman near the water, not a stranger, not a ghost, but someone familiar in a way they could not explain. My daughter said the woman waved sometimes, but never with her whole hand. My son said she stood too still, even when the wind moved everything else. I told them they were describing reflections, and they asked why reflections watched them back. That was the day Iris stopped sleeping indoors. She refused to cross the back doorway after sunset and paced near the windows instead, watching the lake without blinking. I started keeping the curtains closed, but it did not help. The reflections remained. One afternoon, while cleaning the upstairs bathroom, I noticed water pooling beneath the sink. The pipes were dry. The faucet had not been used. The water smelled like the lake. That evening, the kids asked why their bathwater felt deeper than usual. I checked the tub and found nothing wrong, but they refused to get back in. My husband changed after that, not suddenly, and not enough to point to a moment and name it. He spent more time near the lake. He corrected the kids when they spoke about it, even when they were joking. He stopped answering when I asked if he had locked the doors. One night, I found him standing at the back window with the lights off, watching the reflection of the house instead of the house itself. He said the reflection felt more accurate, and I did not ask what he meant. The moment that forced everything into focus came on a cloudy afternoon. The kids were at school. My husband was at work. Iris sat rigid near the back door, ears forward and unmoving. I followed her gaze to the lake, and for the first time since we moved in, the reflection showed someone standing on the dock. The dock itself was empty. The figure in the water raised its arms slowly, and when I stepped back, the reflection did not. That night, I packed a bag for the kids. I told my husband we needed to leave just for a few days, just until I could explain things properly. We left before sunrise, and as the car pulled away, I looked back once. The house stood exactly as we had left it. The lake reflected it perfectly, except the reflection showed all 5 of us standing on the porch, including Iris. We never returned. The house was listed again within a month. The photos showed a quiet lake, a clean dock, and a peaceful reflection. I still check the listing sometimes. It never mentions how well the water remembers the people who stay.